Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a Penn Ultralite. This is in the Penn 716 series. This is 716 and 720. They're both basically the same reel with the exception of the spool capacity. I think this one is the 716. The screw is fallen off. Well, we've got an issue here that's twofold. We have a broken bail spring, and we have a trip lever that's, just being stubborn. It doesn't trip back all the way. So we're going to show you how to take care of those issues and tune this reel up and show you how the reel is all around from a manufacturer and a service perspective. So if you like these kinds of videos, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to the channel, please use the notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting. Well, we're going to do a couple of things. I call that the ballerina move. It just kind of puts the hands over and does a little spiraling and never does close. And we're going to take care of all of those issues. I went out and ordered a new bail spring. It was easy to see just looking underneath it that the spring was missing a leg on it. So we'll take care of that. Take care of a couple of things here. I'm going to remove this spool, which has got a lot of line on it, and put a rubber band on that. That's the best way for me to hold the spool together. And generally, when you're servicing a reel, I like to make it a point to say, go ahead and change the line over at that point. This is not my reel. This belongs to Paul. I don't know if Paul put the line on last week or last year or 10 years ago. I will recommend to him that he change the line, but it may already be there. This reel holds 2, 4, and 6 pound test, I think. Yeah, 2, 4, and 6. So I'm thinking this is the 716, but I could be wrong. All right, we're going to remove that. And when I change over, I bought the spring from mysticparts.com. When I change over and do the bail spring, I like to do it with the rotor off. And it looks like we have a stubborn trip mechanism here. So what I'm going to do before I do that is I'm just going to flood that with some penetrating oil. Chances are most of the time this lever gets stuck because it gets dirty. It's a spring-driven lever, and we'll work on it, but for the most part, it tends to be that it sticks because the dirt's gotten in there. There's a way to take this off completely if we need to. We'll figure it out. All right, let's start by the reel. The anti-reverse is on, so I like to take the anti-reverse and put it in the off position when I work on a reel. And then this handle is going to come off in a reverse crank way, so it's going to be turned, in this case, clockwise. You can remove that. There's a little washer underneath that you need to be aware of. And when I take my pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray. The other thing I recommend that you do, particularly on older reels where you may not be able to find the information that you need, like schematics and the like, and schematics are available on this one, but as a general point, take pictures. The pictures will help you to determine the orientation of pieces and parts, the sequence that you took the pieces and parts off with, and well, when it comes time to reinstall, you'll find that too. Looks like we have some shaving. Most of the time those shavings indicate that something is not right inside the reel. I'm not quite sure what it was. It doesn't look terrible, but we'll do a little bit closer inspection. The reel is, well, it's grease choked. That probably makes sense. The fellow tells me he's had this reel pretty much all his life. It hasn't been serviced much. Been fishing with it, and well, he finally gave up the bail spring, and that's kind of how it got the attention here. But we're going to take care to do a full service on this one, and that's what we want to show you. So this is one of the smaller ones. It's an ultralight. Penn never really had a lot of success with small ultralight reels. They were always pretty much focused on salt water, and every now and then you find these smaller reels. This one's actually pretty rare because of they just didn't sell a lot of them, but they are nice reels nonetheless, and if you have the opportunity to find one, it's a good thing to go invest in. I think you'll enjoy fishing with it. This one's dirty. We got a little bit more of that brass on the side there, so I'm not quite sure what's what's grinding down there, but something is. We'll find out. Alright, we want to remove all the gears, service the reel, in addition to fixing that bail issue. So we're going to take the axle shaft off next. We've already removed the screw from the crosswind arm above. Now we have the screw for the axle shaft that attaches the bottom. Take that out. And now we should be able to pull up and out on that axle shaft. Of course, this has been in there now for probably 20 plus years, so it may take a little bit of time and effort to get it up, but don't worry, you will get it up and out. I'll put that screw so I don't knock that off. Let that gate open, the main gear can come out, so let's do that. Get that out of the way. There's also a little collar here stuck in the mud. But that is the inside of that crosswind here, and that'll make it a little bit easier for us to handle this. While you have that open, take a picture here, just in case. This anti-reverse dog is screwed in, so it's not going to be that easy to pop it out, but if you need to, that'll tell you the orientation on that piece. Alright, well this is okay, and just keep working it. Eventually you will get it out. There we go. Clean it off. Make sure as you're doing that make sure that the shaft is not pitted or stuck. I'm going to put a little bath of penetrating oil on here, see if we can't wipe that dried surface grease off. I'm going to grab a brush here. We did see a little bit of brass. I don't know what may have caught on what, but I do want to inspect the teeth, make sure they're okay. Yeah, they're okay. I put that in our tray. Same thing here, wipe off that crosswind arm. All those pieces go in there. You've taken your pictures, you know where that's all about. So let's come on over and take this out then. You're going to need a deep socket for this. And it's probably an American threaded socket, but I think the 10 millimeter may do here. Hold your rotor. There we go, we can do that. And once I break that hold of the nut, I want to just kind of take it out by hand. It's easier for me, and we can pull up and out on the spool. And these parts have been in there for a while now, so there we go. We're off and out on the spool. We have a little tie down clip there, so let's just pop that out so we don't lose that. Take those two and put those in a parts tray. That parts tray is, as you can see, has got a lot of corners on it, and I tend to segregate my pieces by corners. I'm going to set this off to the side for a moment. Now this is your trip lever here. It appears to be dirty or stuck, so I'm going to put some penetrating oil into that. I'm just going to work that back and forth a little bit. It's spring driven, so eventually this thing should loosen up. Probably just hasn't seen all that much oil or grease in a while. We'll just set that over to the side for a moment. We're going to continue. We'll take the gear out. We'll do that case. And we'll come back up top and work on that rotor and the bail spring. All right, there's two screws holding this up. Take a picture. I think this is the only way it can go. I believe this is a floating trip here, so this is the only way it can go. But whenever you start to remove collars and tie downs on fishing reels to get to the main part, it's always good to take that picture. If you don't have the picture and you turn a collar the wrong way, you could set a different place where the bail is going to trip, and sometimes it's inconvenient. All right, take that collar up. Yes, we have that little arm here. Pull it out. Take the picture there as well. Notice that you have a kind of a fat and a thin side. This is the upside. Just remember that when you go to reinstall in the case. This should just pull out now, but after all these years, I'm pretty much going to assume nothing is going to just pull out. I'm going to flood this with penetrating oil. I'm going to put the rotor back on. the rotor nut, and I'm going to use it as a knob to give me more leverage to pull that piece out. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, see how much easier that works. It's just a big grip. Leave those questions in the comment section, and I will try to help you with an answer. Maybe it's something historic, like when was the reel made? When was it last made? Those kinds of things. I'll have to go do some research. I think it was probably last made in the 80s. This fella tells me he's had the reel since like 1982, so it may have been one of the last runs there. Or, you know, maybe you have a reel you're working on and you're stuck on a particular thing. A fellow sent me a note this morning, said, I'm taking apart a Long Beach reel, but it looks nothing like the schematic. It's got a flat spring for a dog, not a doesn't have the coil spring that's shown in the schematic. What's going on here? And I was able to answer that. What was going on there is the reel was made before 1957, when Penn used the flat spring dog technology as opposed to the coil spring. Then we got him straight again. I had a little video I actually did on how to set that flat spring, and he's off and servicing his reel again. All right. We cleaned all of the pieces. You saw me use a brush to knock out some of the old dried grease. We're going to just get a lot of nice grease back on the stem. We've oiled the bearing. The bearing's going to go back on now. That whole piece is going to go right back into the carrier. Oops. Just as I said that, I noticed that there's a little bit of dirt that I did not clean out of the case. So we're going to take care of that right now. So much of the reel repair is simply just cleaning, getting rid of the old greases and oils, inspecting the pieces and parts, which we've been doing, a little bit of fresh oiling, fresh greases, and reinstall and get it going fishing again. I'm going to put that back in. We have the tie-down collar now, a little lever for the trip bar, our 2 screws. Remember what I said, you have a thick and a thin on this side. So we've got to install that first. We have the little slot. You know what the right side of the collar is on this, because it's got a flare in it to accept the flat head screw without letting it protrude. So easy enough. And those of you that know me and small screws, now it's probably time to go get a beverage of your choice. Come on back and watch me finish it off. That's one. At least in this one we have a screw start kind of a thing, quasi screw start with that piece there. Okay, those are your 2 pieces, your collar and your screw. And actually we can keep going on this and just finish the bottom of the reel. Still a little bit curious about where that came from, the filings. All right, let's go over to the rotor. I said finish the base of this spool, but the rotor needs to be on for the axle shaft, so let's go there. I'm using a 1/4 inch nut driver to remove the nut that holds the bail line roller and the bail onto the bail arm. And I just put that right back on there so they don't lose the line roller. This can go off to the side. You can leave it there. This is why I like to work on the rotor off of the reel when I do a bail spring replacement, because it's just less awkward, and you're not fighting the rotation of the rotor on the reel every time you want to move the rotor. So we'll do that. Sometimes you're going to see this reel and you're going to see that the bail is set way low, and that's because this little plastic bump has worn off or broken off. And well, you're not going to find a replacement for that. People have built replacements, all kinds of things. They've used things that included hot gluing and other things to build that up. I've seen toothpicks jammed in there to build them up. You can do that. Kind of bush fixes. Okay, here's our broken bail spring. Now we'll get the new one. And as I mentioned, this came from mysticparts.com. If you need Penn parts, they're an authorized Penn parts distributor, and they have most parts that are available for the Penn reels ready to order online. There's two different sides on the bail spring. One goes at a 90-degree angle, the other's flat. There's a hole in the case here that accepts the flat one. Best way for me to set these has always been to set them in the negative. In other words, I want to take all the tension off of this, find the hole in the back here, put the bail on, and roll it back a long way. I'm going to start the screw. I find if you try to set it too close to where it belongs, all you're doing is fighting the spring. Okay, so we've got this started now, and you can see we're way out of position, and we've got to clear this hurdle before we can go any further. So that's why I just started. And then you can press down like this, and you can start to aim the screw. Now, the screw's got a collar on it, so you need to make sure that the collar goes inside the hole of the bail arm. And I think we probably successfully have done that. Now we have the rest on that bump guard. We have this at the 90-degree angle, and this thing should spring and flip like a bail spring. I think Paul is going to be very happy with that. Well, we want to also just take a moment now. So this is where you have your bail trip mechanism. There's a spring under this. It's being held in by those two screws right here, one on each side. There's a pin and a spring that goes through this lever. I think we've done an okay job here of working that spring loose, but I'm going to take the other side of the bail off right now. There's nothing under here. I call it a dead end, but there is that lever. So let's make sure. And now we have that trip lever working. And we didn't really do much of anything other than spray it with penetrating oil. Well, penetrating oil is a good cleaner, and it can loosen and degrease, but it doesn't stay around very long. So I'm going to put some oil in there, both sides, and I think we probably have solved that issue as well. Okay, well now I probably messed up because I don't remember which side of this ring it goes. I believe it goes this way. And grab that, put that into the slot, and reset this. Find out in a moment if it's not correct. Start these by hand. I can't tell you how many of these screws I get. Somebody was over aggressive and something broke the screw off in the housing, and well, can't do much with that. Okay, press down on this to release that. Bring it around. Now I can take off the nut that's holding the line guide. That's easy to say, isn't it? Easy to say, not necessarily easy to do. Bring this back in. Put that back on. Let's get that nut driver. If you don't have the nut driver, a 1/4-inch socket in a socket set will work. Flip it. It's certainly flipping nicely. And the moment of truth will be when we put that on and make sure that it trips. All right, let's put this back on now. And you want to get that little collar. Get that back on. Make sure that gets seated properly. This is probably a 7/16 nut. I'm not quite sure. I do know the 10mm socket worked on it, but it may not be the right socket. It goes on in the traditional clockwise connection. For those of you that don't know clockwise, turn the nut away from you and then just reset it. Let's give it a spin. Spins nicely. And let's go back to rebuild the rest of the reel then. Alright, now we have the main gear. Do the same thing here. Light coating of grease on that shaft. Get a good coating of grease onto the teeth. This is a combination gear. It has the teeth on the one side, and it has the anti-reverse ratchet on the back side here. That's why you set it in the off position, because if it's in the on position, a lot of times that anti-reverse dog can get trapped and you won't seat the gear all the way. So we're in the off position on that. We're going to go ahead and push that in. Make sure we're in the off position. Okay. You can, if you like, I'll do that because I like. You can put the handle back in now to hold everything stable. And because we took this off in a clockwise manner, we're going to put this back on in a counterclockwise, or just turn it to you. Heard a little squeak in the knob, so let's just take care of that while we're at it. Looks like I'm running low on my penetrating wheel. And now we can go back with the axle shaft. Again, a light coating of grease. This is going to pass through the pinion gear, so if you put too much grease on it, it's just going to rub off as it passes through. Bring that down. Let's take the mounter. There's that little hub piece here. And we have the crosswind arm. And the crosswind screw that seats into the main gear. Again, be careful when you're working with this one. From experience, I've found that people have over-tightened this and snapped the screw off in the main gear. And it's get a new main gear time. And you got a collar that you got to seat this into, just like we had to do with the bail. And just visually look, you got to work that collar a little bit to get it to square up. This one's just being a little stubborn. There we go. I think we got it now. Get the right size screwdriver for the screw so that you don't damage. And tighten it all the way down. Make sure that your crosswind block moves back and forth. That's needed so that it has the right swing. Get the axle shaft now, push that through. This takes a little bit of finesse because it doesn't square up easily, so if I'm off camera I'm going to apologize right away. We got that started right now. Then when you go to put this in now, make sure that your hole in the axle shaft lines up with the hole in the crosswind block. And again, it's a little bit of seating. You got to play a little bit with it. Eventually you will bring it down to where it belongs. Once you've worked that in enough, you should be able to align the hole in the axle shaft with the hole in the crosswind arm. Let's take that screw. Set that in, and we'll pretty much be able to tie this down, put the plate on, give it a try. Again, I'm kind of curious on where that brass shaving issue was from. Could be that something worked itself a little loose. But again, the fella said it hasn't been serviced in a very long time, so something may have come out of spec a little bit. Okay, put the cover back on now by seating that screw. So what did we do? We did a couple of things here. It came in because it had a bail spring issue. We noticed as well that the trip lever was sluggish and that the reel hadn't been serviced. So we took care of all of that. There's no sense just working on one piece or part. To check your drag system, it should be a Teflon drag. Just hold the bottom stud here, unscrew your top. We should have a metal washer and a Teflon one underneath. Notice the orientation on this. Those prongs are on the outside facing up. You can push through on that if you like. This reveals your Teflon washer and your press. You can clean the metal washer, just wipe it off. It's probably got a little bit of age and grease and dirt on there because it is a top-loaded drag system. Get rid of that stuff, clean up the cavity underneath. Teflon washer goes in, push your stud back up. This is a keyed washer, so find the flat side so that it sits right. The prongs face out towards the rim. Put our piece back on, and you don't grease or oil Teflon. It's a petroleum product that's self-lubricating. You don't need to do anything with it. Tighten that down. That should just snap back on our axle shaft now, and now the ultimate test. Make sure that the handle is in the right position. Wipe off a little bit of the excess of the oil, and while I do that, I want to thank our first responders and essential personnel for everything they do. I appreciate you and your life choices in terms of making it good for all people to stay safe and stay well, and I thank you for that. Okay, let's give it a ride. Well, that's working nicely. Let's do what it was designed to do. We want to flip, and we have a nice easy trip to that. So one of the things we have here is we have a bail that doesn't extend all the way. That's because this apparently got bent down somewhere along the line, and we can do a little bit to bend that to the correct position. Probably too long for this video. I'm going to take this off. I'll use pliers and some gentle pressure to push that up. When you push that up, it'll move this back off that spool, and it'll make it a little bit easier to clear the line when you're casting. So that's it. That's our Penn 716 Ultralite reel, how to take apart, how to service, how to reinstall a bad bail spring, and how to keep this fishing reel going for another 20 or 30 years. I hope you've enjoyed that. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day. Please keep your tackle serviced. Keep it ready to go fishing because you never know when the bite will be on. Have a great day.